Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Find yourself a comfortable position right now. Let your shoulders drop just a little. Let your hands rest somewhere soft, and take one slow breath in through your nose. Hold it gently for just a moment, and then let it go. Good. You're here now. That's all you need to be. Tonight, we're going to drift together through one of the most peaceful and quietly beautiful mysteries in all of nature. The story of how things age. How time moves through living things the way wind moves through tall grass, leaving everything a little softer, a little more shaped, a little more itself than it was before. Aging isn't something that happens to us like a storm. It's something that unfolds in us, slowly, the way a river carves a canyon not by force, but by the gentlest and most persistent touch, by simply being there, day after day, moving in the same soft direction. So, let your body settle now. Let the sounds around you grow a little quieter in your mind, and let's begin at the very beginning, at the smallest, most invisible place where all of this quiet change begins. Inside every living thing, inside every oak tree and bumblebee and blade of grass, and yes, inside you, there are tiny structures called cells. You have trillions of them, trillions, and each one is like a small, warm room in an enormous house, going about its business quietly, doing what it knows how to do. Inside each of those cells, there is something even smaller, a long spiraling thread of instructions called DNA. If you could take all the DNA from just one of your cells and stretch it out in a single line, it would be about 2 meters long. Imagine that. 2 meters of incredibly fine thread, folded so perfectly it fits inside something you could never see with your naked eye. That thread holds everything. The color of your eyes, the shape of your hands, the way your body heals when you scrape your knee on a warm summer afternoon, all of it folded quietly inside each cell, waiting. And at the very ends of those DNA threads, there are little caps. Scientists call them telomeres, but you can think of them the way you think of the small plastic tips at the ends of shoelaces, the ones that keep everything from fraying. Those little tips protect the whole long thread of your DNA. Now, here is one of the most gentle and interesting things in all of biology. Each time a cell divides, each time it becomes 2 cells instead of 1, the way a candle flame can light another candle, those little caps get just a tiny bit shorter. Not by much, just a whisper shorter. But over time, over many years and many divisions, they grow shorter and shorter. This is one of the ways time moves through a living body. Not dramatically, not loudly. Just in these tiny, almost musical moments of shortening, again and again, like the slow lowering of a tide. When those caps become very short, the cell changes its behavior. It doesn't panic. It simply slows down. It stops dividing. Scientists call these cells senescent, which is a word that comes from the Latin for growing old. The cell, in a way, has decided to rest. And there is something quite lovely in that, if you let yourself feel it. The idea that even your smallest parts know when it's time to rest. Outside of those cells in the world we can actually see, aging leaves its marks in the most beautiful ways. Think of the bark of an old oak tree, deeply grooved, rich with texture, the surface of decades of slow growing. A young tree has smooth bark. An old tree has stories written all over it, in lines and ridges you could trace with your fingertips. Those lines in the bark aren't damage. They are a record of every season the tree has known. Every winter that drew it inward, and every spring that pushed it gently outward again. In a way, the lines on an old face work the same way. Around the eyes, at the corners of a mouth that has smiled many times. Each one is a small record of a moment that mattered. Take a slow breath now. Feel the air move in and out of you, easy and soft. Your body right now is doing something extraordinary and completely automatic. It is repairing itself. Every single night while you sleep, while you're exactly where you are now, resting, quiet, safe, your cells are working. They are fixing small errors in your DNA, the way a careful gardener walks through a garden in the early morning, straightening what has been blown crooked by the wind. This repair work is one of the reasons sleep is so deeply connected to how we age. The night is when so much of the quiet maintenance happens. The body loves the dark and the stillness. It uses them. In the forests of the Pacific Northwest, there are trees called Sitka spruces that can live for hundreds of years. When scientists study the cells of these ancient trees, they find the same telomere shortening that happens in animals, but so much more slowly. The tree's time is simply measured differently. A year to a Sitka spruce is not the same as a year to a small mouse, or to you. And speaking of mice, a wild mouse lives for about 1 to 3 years. Not because its life is harder, but because its cells divide faster, its heart beats faster, its whole biological rhythm runs at a quicker tempo. It lives its life in a faster key, whereas a tortoise, with its slow heartbeat and its measured pace, can live for more than a century. There is something almost musical about this, that the tempo of a life is written into its very biology. That slowness and length have a quiet relationship with each other. If you feel your eyes growing a little heavy, that is perfectly welcome. You're in a safe place. Let them be as heavy as they'd like. One of the most fascinating things scientists have found about aging is something called the Hayflick limit. A man named Leonard Hayflick discovered in the 1960s that human cells don't divide forever. They divide roughly 50 times, 50 rounds of becoming 2 instead of 1, and then they stop. This number isn't random. It's written into us, the way the number of rings in a tree is written into the wood, 50 divisions, and then rest. This was a remarkable thing to understand because before that discovery, many scientists assumed cells could divide indefinitely. But Hayflick showed, with patient and careful work, that they have a natural limit, a natural resting point built into their very beginning. The world outside your window right now is full of things resting. If it is night where you are, the birds are tucked into branches, their heads beneath their wings. The flowers have closed themselves gently, their petals drawn in like a quiet fist, waiting for the light. Even the soil is resting, cooler now, softer, breathing slowly in the dark. You are part of that same rhythm. Let yourself feel that for a moment, the enormous, quiet company of everything that is resting right now, all across the world. The sleeping birds, and the closed flowers, and the slow soil, and you here in this soft and peaceful moment. We are only just beginning our story tonight. There is so much more to drift through together. The way water and time shape stones, the way certain trees barely seem to age at all, the strange and wonderful fact that some creatures seem to grow younger instead of older. But for now, simply rest in the beginning of it, in the knowledge that time is not something to rush through, that it moves through all living things the same way light moves through deep water, slowly, softly, turning everything it touches into something more interesting than it was before. The night continues, and so does our gentle drift through the story of time. There is a creature, small, almost invisible, living in the cold waters of the ocean, called the hydra. It is a tiny, soft animal, almost like a miniature flower with tentacles, living among the rocks and weeds of freshwater ponds and streams. And scientists who study the hydra have noticed something remarkable about it. The hydra doesn't seem to age, not in the way most living things do. Its cells renew themselves so efficiently, so continuously, that the body of a hydra that is 10 years old looks and functions almost identically to one that is 10 days old. It simply keeps renewing, like a candle that never burns down. Biologists call this biological immortality. Though it's a soft kind of immortality, the hydra can still be eaten or dry out or meet misfortune. But from the inside, from the cellular level, it doesn't accumulate the changes that we associate with growing old. This little creature floats through cold, clear water, barely half a centimeter long, carrying within it one of the most extraordinary biological secrets in the living world. And it does it so quietly. So, without any fuss, let your breath be like that right now, quiet, without fuss, in and out, easy as water moving. There is a type of jellyfish, Turritopsis dohrnii, so small you could mistake it for a droplet of glass in the water. And this creature, when it is stressed or injured or simply very old, can do something almost incomprehensible. It can reverse its own life cycle. It can turn itself back into an earlier form, like a butterfly becoming a caterpillar again, and begin its life over. Scientists call this process transdifferentiation. The cells of the jellyfish actually change their identity. A skin cell becomes a nerve cell, a muscle cell becomes something else entirely, and the animal starts fresh. It has been called the only biologically immortal animal on Earth, though researchers are still learning what this truly means. For now, it drifts through the Mediterranean Sea and the warm Atlantic, small as a thumbnail, carrying its quiet miracle through the blue-green water. The ocean holds so many of these peaceful mysteries. Greenland sharks, enormous slow-moving creatures of the deep cold water, can live for hundreds of years. The oldest one scientists have found is estimated to be around 500 years old. 5 centuries. This shark was alive when explorers were first crossing the Atlantic, when the forests of Europe were still vast and unbroken, when people looked up at the same stars we see tonight and told different stories about them. And what is the secret of the Greenland shark's extraordinary age? In part, it is simply this: it moves very slowly. It lives in very cold water. Its metabolism, the speed at which its body processes energy, is among the slowest of any creature on Earth. It is in no hurry. Not at all. There is a lesson there that doesn't need to be spoken too loudly. If you are listening to this while lying down, you might feel the weight of your body against whatever is beneath you. The mattress, the pillow, the soft surface that holds you. Feel that contact right now, the support of it. Everything holding you gently so you don't need to hold yourself. That's a gift your body receives every single night. And it matters more than we sometimes remember. The skin, your skin, the skin of every living creature, is one of the most visible places where time writes its story. And it does so through a process that is, when you understand it, surprisingly beautiful. Skin is made of layers. The outermost layer, the one you can touch right now if you run your hand along your arm, is made of cells that are already at the end of their journey. They have traveled upward from the deeper layers over the course of several weeks, slowly rising like bubbles through still water. And by the time they reach the surface, they are flat and quiet and finished. The skin sheds millions of these cells every hour, and new ones are always rising from below to take their place. When we are young, this renewal is fast and easy. The new cells arrive quickly. The surface stays smooth and hydrated. As we age, the process slows, not dramatically, not painfully, but gradually, the way a river slows as it reaches flatter land. The new cells take a little longer. The surface holds a little less moisture. Lines and texture begin to appear, and those lines, they are simply the record of a face that has moved, that has laughed and frowned and squinted into sunlight and pressed against a warm pillow exactly the way you're pressing into yours right now. Collagen is the word for the protein that keeps skin plump and springy. You might have heard it. It is the most abundant protein in the whole human body, found in skin, yes, but also in tendons, in the soft cushions between bones, in the walls of blood vessels. Collagen is structure. It is the quiet framework of you. Over time, the body produces a little less of it. The collagen that remains begins to form different kinds of connections, stiffer, less elastic. This is why skin becomes less springy with age. It's the biology of it, plain and soft, and simply what it is. In a forest, something similar happens to the wood of an old tree. The inner rings, the oldest wood, become denser, harder, darker. The heartwood, it's called. And it is the heartwood that makes an old tree strong. The age of it becomes its strength. If you'd like to leave a kind comment on this video or tap the like button, that would mean so much. It helps more people find this little channel and drift off to sleep with us. But no rush. There's nowhere to be right now. In the body, there is a molecule called NAD+, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, which is a beautiful mouthful that you don't need to remember. What matters is what it does. It is like a kind of cellular currency. It helps energy move where it needs to go. It is involved in repair processes, in the regulation of hundreds of tiny cellular events that happen all day long without your awareness, without any effort from you at all. As the body ages, levels of this molecule gradually decline. The cellular economy runs a little more slowly, the way a market town slows in the late afternoon. Still going, still full of life, but at a quieter pace. Scientists are very interested in this molecule. Not because aging is a problem to be solved, but because understanding the machinery of it helps us understand how living things work at the most fundamental level. It is basic curiosity, the same curiosity that makes you wonder about the night sky, or what a stone looked like 1,000 years ago. Speaking of stones, the mountains outside, wherever mountains exist in your world, are aging too. Slowly, impossibly slowly, but aging. Granite peaks that look eternal are being shaped right now by frost and wind and the patient work of water finding its way into every tiny crack. Water freezes in a crack in a rock and expands, and the rock splits, not today, not this winter, but over centuries, over millennia. The mountain is patient. The mountain does not mind, and the ancient sea floor, the basalt and sediment at the very bottom of the deep ocean, is hundreds of millions of years old in places, older than the dinosaurs, older than flowers, resting there in the dark and the cold, unchanged, holding the record of a world that is almost unimaginable to us. You are resting now in much the same way, quietly, holding your own record, your own story. There is a field of science called epigenetics, which is one of the most quietly fascinating things in modern biology. The prefix epi means above or on top of. So, epigenetics is about the information that sits on top of your genes, not changing the sequence of your DNA, but changing which parts of it are active, which parts are quiet. Think of your DNA as a very long piece of music, millions of notes. Epigenetics is like the volume controls and the mutes that determine which sections you actually hear at any given moment. Some sections might be turned up, others turned almost completely down. As we age, the settings on these controls change. Parts of the genome that were quiet become more active. Parts that were active grow quieter. The symphony of your biology shifts its arrangement over time. And here is something lovely. These epigenetic changes can be influenced by the way we live, by rest, by warmth, by the slow, unconscious rhythm of a body that is given the chance to simply be. Sleep is when many epigenetic repairs happen. The body, in the quiet of night, adjusts its settings, restores some of what the day has altered. It is tending to itself. the way you might tidy a room when the house is still and no one needs anything from you. Let yourself be tended to right now, by the night, by the quiet, by your own biology, doing its slow and beautiful work while you rest. There is a valley in the mountains of Sardinia, an island that sits like a soft stone in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. The valley is called Ogliastra, and it is known for something remarkable. The people who live there grow very old. Not just old, extraordinarily old. The region has one of the highest concentrations of centenarians, people who have lived to 100 years or more anywhere in the world. Researchers have traveled to this valley and spent time there trying to understand. And what they found was not dramatic. It was quiet, simple. The people walked up and down the steep hillsides day after day, the way the land asked them to. They ate food grown close to home. They rested in the afternoon. They spent time with their families. They knew their neighbors. The science behind longevity, behind living a long and gentle life, is not as complicated as we sometimes imagine it to be. The body is, in many ways, asking for very simple things. Movement, food that comes from the earth, rest, company. And of course, there is something in the hills themselves, the air of those mountain valleys, the rhythm of a life lived in contact with the land. Breathe in slowly now. Imagine, if you like, that the air you're breathing carries something of that mountain air, cool and clear, and carrying the faint green smell of rosemary growing wild on the hillsides. The science of aging has a beautiful word at its center: longevity. From the Latin longae vitas, meaning simply long life. And within longevity science, one of the most interesting conversations is about the difference between lifespan and health span. Lifespan is simply how long you live. Health span is how well you live. How many of those years you spend feeling strong, clear-minded, engaged with the world around you. Scientists who study aging are increasingly focused on the health span, on the idea that what matters most is not adding years to life, but adding life to years. It is a gentle shift in perspective, and a lovely one. A bristlecone pine tree at the top of a mountain in Nevada has a health span that lasts thousands of years. These trees, the oldest living trees on Earth, are still photosynthesizing, still drawing water up through their roots, still making the slow cellular processes of life happen at 4,000, even 5,000 years of age. The oldest known individual tree, a bristlecone pine called Methuselah, grows somewhere in the White Mountains of California. Its exact location is kept secret to protect it. It has been alive since before the Egyptian pyramids were built. It has known 5,000 winters, and still it grows, slowly, with great patience, with no hurry at all. If the playlist of sleepy science stories sounds like something you'd want to return to, something to make a gentle habit of, you can find it waiting for you whenever you need it. It's there, like a quiet room you can always come back to. Inside the human brain, there is a structure called the hippocampus, curved and soft, about the size and shape of a small seahorse, sitting deep in the center of the brain. And the hippocampus is one of the only places in the adult brain where new neurons, new brain cells, can actually be born. This process is called neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons, and it happens in you right now as an adult, which is something scientists once believed was impossible. For a long time, the accepted idea was that you were born with all the brain cells you would ever have, and from there, it was a slow decline. But the brain is more generous than that, more hopeful. It keeps making new cells, particularly in the hippocampus, particularly in response to things like exercise and rest, and research suggests the reduction of chronic stress. The hippocampus is involved in memory and in navigation, in finding your way through space and through time. It is, in a soft metaphor, the part of you that knows where home is. And even as the years pass, even as other things in the body slow, the hippocampus can keep growing new cells. The brain can keep learning, can keep forming new paths through its own landscape, the way a river can always find a new channel if the old one is blocked. Think of that. The part of you that holds memory and direction still growing, still finding new ways through. There are rivers in the world so old, they are called antecedent rivers, rivers that predate the mountains they flow through. The land rose up around them as tectonic plates slowly shifted and compressed. But the rivers kept flowing, cutting down through the rising rock, maintaining their ancient courses. The New River in Appalachia is thought to be one of the oldest rivers in North America, perhaps 300 million years old, older than the mountains it runs through. 300 million years, and still flowing, still soft and moving and alive. Aging in the most beautiful way is just that, the steady flowing of something through time, maintaining its essential nature even as the landscape around it changes. Your essential nature, the thing that makes you recognizably yourself, is not erased by time. It is refined by it. The way a river stone is refined, not broken, but smoothed, made more perfectly itself. Feel the weight of your own body right now, settling into the surface beneath you. Feel how the edges of you soften a little when you're not holding yourself upright. The parts of you that were tense during the day finding their way toward ease, like water finding its own level. This is what the body does when you let it. It finds its own level. It rests into itself. Among the most fascinating places in the biology of aging is a part of the cell called the mitochondria. These are tiny, much smaller than the cell itself, and they have their own separate DNA, different from the DNA in the cell's nucleus. Scientists believe mitochondria were once separate creatures entirely, ancient bacteria billions of years ago that were absorbed into larger cells and formed a partnership so successful it has persisted ever since. They are, in a sense, ancient travelers that decided to stay. Mitochondria make energy. They take the food you eat and the oxygen you breathe and combine them into the fuel that powers everything. Every thought, every heartbeat, every slow breath you're taking right now. They are the small, warm engines at the center of all living things. As the body ages, mitochondria become less efficient. Some accumulate small errors in their own DNA. They reproduce more slowly. The energy economy of the body shifts, becomes a little more conservative, the way a wise household adjusts its habits as circumstances change. But they keep working, quietly, continuously, in every cell of you, converting air and food and light into the warmth of being alive. Somewhere outside, if you listen or imagine listening, there might be wind moving through trees, or rain beginning to fall on a dark street, or the deep silence of a clear night where even the wind has gone to rest. The trees in that silence are doing something quietly extraordinary. Their cells are mostly resting. Most plant growth happens in spring and early summer, and in the cold or the dark, the tree goes into a kind of slow waiting. Its metabolism drops. Its water moves more slowly. It conserves. This is one of the reasons old trees are often more resistant to stress than young ones. They have learned, in the biological sense, how to wait, how to pull inward when conditions are hard and expand again when the conditions are kind. There is wisdom in that, not the kind of wisdom you decide to have, the kind that accumulates the way rings accumulate in wood, year after year, quietly, until the patience of a living thing becomes something almost architectural. Let's drift a little now into the part of aging that lives in the spaces between cells, the fluid, the connective tissue, the slow and patient architecture of the body's scaffolding. Your body is largely water, more than 60%, and that water, the fluid in and around your cells, is not just a passive medium. It is active. It carries messages. It delivers nutrients. It removes waste. It is constantly moving, shifting, doing the gentle work of keeping everything connected. As the body ages, the balance of this fluid shifts in subtle ways. Tissues that were once soft and springy hold a little less water. The spaces between things, between cells, between fibers, change their characters slightly. It is like the difference between a young sponge and an older one. Both still sponges, both still doing what sponges do, but the texture has changed. Cartilage, the smooth, pale tissue that cushions your joints, begins its life almost entirely made of water. In an infant, cartilage is 80% water. By the time a person is older, that percentage has dropped considerably. The cushion is still there, still working, but slightly drier, slightly less spring in its step. The body compensates for this in ways that are often invisible to us because the body is remarkably good at compensating. It adjusts the way it distributes weight. It changes movement patterns in tiny ways. It is always finding the path of least resistance, always flowing around the obstacle the way water flows around a stone. Water knows how to do this without thinking, and so, in its own way, does the body. Outside in the world tonight, if there is a river somewhere near where you are, or even far away, flowing through a dark valley you've never visited, that river is doing its endless work, carrying sediment, shaping banks, moving the small stones of its bed a little further along their slow journeys toward the sea. A stone in a river doesn't resist its smoothing. It simply receives it. Year by year, water year, the edges soften. The angles become curves. The rough surface becomes polished and pale. And the stone that began sharp and jagged becomes something you'd want to hold in your hand for the simple pleasure of how it feels. Is there something in that for all of us? Take a slow breath. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw unclench if it was holding anything. There is a field of research called senolytics, which sounds complicated, but is simply the study of how to gently clear away those senescent cells we talked about earlier, the cells that have stopped dividing but linger in the body, sometimes causing a low-level kind of inflammation in the tissues around them. Scientists sometimes describe these cells as the body's retired workers. They've done their shifts, they've stopped their active work, but they don't always leave gracefully. Sometimes they stay and, in staying, release small chemical signals that encourage their neighbors to slow down too. Researchers are studying natural compounds, some found in plants, in fruits, in the leaves and roots of things that grow in gardens and forests, that may help the body clear these lingering cells more effectively. The science is early and still unfolding, but there is something lovely about the idea that nature has already been working on this problem in its own quiet way for millions of years. The earth is full of old things that still work. The limestone cliffs of the Dolomites in northern Italy are made of compressed shells and skeletons of creatures that lived in a warm, shallow sea 300 million years ago. Those creatures, small, soft, ancient beyond imagining, are now part of a mountain. Their remains are holding up the sky. Nothing is really lost. It is only changed into something else. This is one of the most peaceful thoughts in all of science, if you let it settle into you. The material of everything is ancient and recycled and continuous. The calcium in your bones was once in the ocean floor, or in an old star that exploded before our sun was born. The iron in your blood was forged in a star's heart. You are made of things that have been traveling through the universe for billions of years, arranged for a while in the particular form of you. And when that arrangement eventually changes, as all arrangements do, the material doesn't disappear. It continues on into the soil, into the water, into the air, into other living things that will come after, carrying forward something of what you were. That's not sad. It's enormous. And if you hold it gently, it's actually very peaceful. If you're enjoying this journey, you might want to like the video. It helps other sleepy travelers find their way here. And if you have a thought to share, a comment always makes this little corner of the internet feel warmer and more alive. But first, keep resting. There's no hurry. Inside your brain right now, while you rest, something important is happening. The glymphatic system, a network of channels that surrounds the brain's blood vessels, is becoming more active. It is washing the brain, literally washing it, circulating cerebrospinal fluid through the brain tissue, clearing away the metabolic waste that accumulates during the busy hours of wakefulness. Think of it as the night cleaning crew. While the building is empty and quiet, they move through every corridor with their quiet efficiency, sweeping, clearing, restoring order. This system is most active during deep sleep. It is one of the reasons that sleep, real, deep, unhurried sleep, is so fundamental to how the brain ages. When we sleep well, the brain gets cleaned. When we don't, the debris accumulates. The body has known this for longer than science has been able to measure it. The tiredness that pulls you towards sleep is, in part, your brain asking for its nightly rinse and responding to that pull, lying down, closing your eyes, letting the sounds of the day fade, is one of the kindest things you can do for the most extraordinary organ you carry. So let that happen now, if it's happening. Let the heaviness come. It's not a problem to be solved. It's the glymphatic system gently clearing the way. There is something called the rate of living theory, an early idea in the science of aging, now complicated by more nuanced research, but still holding a certain poetry. The idea is simple. Living things have a roughly fixed number of heartbeats. Those who use them slowly live longer. Those who use them quickly live briefly but fully. A hummingbird's heart beats more than 1,000 times per minute. It lives for 3 to 5 years, sometimes less. An elephant's heart beats about 28 times per minute. Elephants can live for 70 years. A blue whale's heart, the largest heart of any animal on Earth, as big as a small car, beats as slowly as 2 times per minute when the whale is diving deep. 2 beats per minute. Imagine the silence between them, the vast underwater quiet between one heartbeat and the next. Blue whales can live for 80 to 90 years. Some may live longer. It is hard to study creatures that spend their lives in the deep ocean, moving between continents as casually as you or I might move between rooms. Your heart, right now, is beating at whatever pace it finds natural in this restful moment. Slower than when you were moving through your day. Slower than when something surprised you or made you laugh. It has settled into its resting rhythm, which is one of the most honest sounds in the world. If you placed your hand on your chest right now, not to measure anything, just to feel, you would feel it. That steady, soft percussion, that patient keeping of time that has not stopped since before you were born and will not stop until the very end of your life. There is nothing else in your experience quite like it. Let it be slow right now. Let it be as slow as it wants to be. In the forests of the Pacific Northwest, where the air is cool and damp and smells of cedar and rain, there are trees that have been standing for 1,000 years, and around them, connecting them beneath the soil, there is a network of fungal threads, mycelium, that links tree to tree across enormous distances. Through this network, old trees share resources with younger ones. Carbon, water, chemical signals. A mother tree, as forest ecologists sometimes call the largest and oldest trees, will send extra sugar through its root connections to a seedling growing in its shadow, a seedling that cannot yet reach the light. The old nourishing the young through a network that has been growing in the dark beneath the forest floor for centuries. Aging in this light is not decline, it is accumulation. The old tree has more connections, more reach, more capacity to give than it had when it was young. Its age has made it more central to the life of the forest, not less. There are cultures around the world where this understanding of age is simply assumed, where the elders are understood to be the nodes of a network, the ones who hold the connections, who know the paths, who remember where water was found in a dry year a generation ago. That knowledge doesn't come quickly. It only comes with time. And time, gentle, patient, unhurried time, is exactly what the night gives us. The stars, if you could see them right now, are impossibly old. The light reaching your eyes from a star like Betelgeuse in the constellation Orion left that star more than 700 years ago. It has been traveling at the speed of light, the fastest thing in the universe, for 700 years, and is only now arriving. You are seeing the star as it was in the year 1300 something, before Columbus crossed the Atlantic, before the printing press. The light is a message from the past, delivered with perfect patience across unimaginable distances, arriving gently in your eye. Betelgeuse is a red supergiant, a star near the end of its life. It has burned through most of its hydrogen fuel and expanded to an enormous size, its surface temperature cooler than a younger star, glowing red. Even stars age. Even stars move through their stages, young and hot and blue, middle-aged and stable and yellow, like our own sun, old and expanded and red. And then, in a long time, something new. Nothing stays the same. Everything moves through its stages, and each stage has its own particular light. The science of aging has a branch called biogerontology, and within it, researchers have been fascinated by a very small roundworm called C. elegans, Caenorhabditis elegans, to give its full musical name. This tiny worm, barely a millimeter long, lives in the soil of gardens and forests around the world, moving through the earth the way thought moves through a quiet mind. C. elegans was the first animal to have its entire genome sequenced. Scientists chose it for this honor, in part because it is transparent. You can see straight through its body with a good microscope, watching every cell do its work in real time. The worm has exactly 959 cells in its body, not one more and not one less. Every individual of the species has exactly the same number. The precision of it is extraordinary. And in this tiny transparent worm, scientists have found something remarkable. By changing the activity of a single gene, one small section of its DNA code, they can more than double its lifespan. A worm that normally lives for 3 weeks can be made to live for 6, 7, 8 weeks, apparently healthy and functional throughout. One gene, one small adjustment to the biological machinery, and time, it seems, stretches. Now, This is a worm. The distance between a tiny soil worm and a human being is vast, and the same trick doesn't simply translate. But the finding points at something important, that the rate of aging is not fixed like a clock ticking at one unchangeable speed. It is more like a dial that biology can, in principle, adjust. Nature has been adjusting this dial for millions of years, in different creatures, in different environments. The result is the extraordinary variety of lifespans we see in the living world, from the mayfly that lives for a single day to the ocean quahog clam that can live for 500 years. 500 years, a clam sitting quietly in the cold water of the North Atlantic, filtering plankton through its shell, perfectly content. Scientists can count the growth rings in a clam shell the way you count rings in a tree. 1 ring per year, laid down in the calcium carbonate of the shell. And one particular ocean quahog, found off the coast of Iceland, had 507 rings. It was named Ming after the Chinese dynasty that was in power when it was born. Ming the clam, born in the 1490s, living through centuries of human history without any awareness of it, growing its slow rings in the cold, quiet dark of the ocean floor. There is something impossibly peaceful about that image. A creature with no concerns, no plans, no memory of the past or worry about the future, just the slow, continuous fact of being alive, adding one more ring to its shell each year, patient as stone. Let yourself be that patient right now. Let the concerns of the day, the ones that felt so pressing a few hours ago, settle down like sediment in a glass of water that has finally been set still. Watch them drift downward, the water above them clearing, growing still, growing clear. You can leave us a comment if something in this journey has touched you. We love reading your words in the morning when the channel wakes up and sees what the night has brought. And if you want more of this, the like button is always there, quietly waiting. Inside the human body, there is a system that works to keep the length of your telomeres, those precious caps at the ends of your DNA, from shortening too quickly. It is called telomerase, an enzyme that can actually rebuild the telomere cap, adding length back to what has been lost. Telomerase is most active in certain special cells, stem cells, and cells of the immune system, and in developing embryos. It is as if the body reserves its most powerful renewal tools for the places and moments where renewal matters most. In cancer cells, telomerase is extremely active. One of the reasons cancer cells can divide without limit. The enzyme that protects against aging when it runs unchecked becomes part of disease. Biology is full of these delicate balances, these things that are good in the right amount and in the right place, but complicated when they go unconstrained. Balance. Always in biology, it comes back to balance. The inhalation and the exhalation, the waking and the sleeping, the growing and the resting. Everything finding its rhythm, its back and forth, its natural tempo. Your breath has a tempo right now. Whatever it is, slow, we hope, slow and deep. It is the rhythm your body has chosen for this moment. Trust it. There are mountains in Scotland called the Cairngorms, ancient, rounded mountains, some of the oldest exposed rock in Europe. The rock there is a particular kind of granite, pink gray and coarse, formed from magma that cooled 390 million years ago, deep underground. Over hundreds of millions of years, the rock above it eroded away, worn down by wind and water and ice, until the granite was exposed. And now it sits at the top of the world, in the wind, in the rain, under the same sun and stars as everything else. Patient, worn smooth in some places, rough and crystalline in others, covered in patches of lichen so old that some of the colonies may have been growing for 1,000 years. Lichen is one of the slowest growing things on Earth. Some species add less than a millimeter per year. They are part fungus and part algae, living in partnership, supporting each other across a boundary that biology itself struggles to define. The fungus provides structure and moisture retention. The algae provides food through photosynthesis. They have been living this way together, fungi and algae, making lichen, for 400 million years. 400 million years of partnership, of finding a way to be together that works. If that isn't a reason to rest easy tonight, I'm not sure what is. By now, your body may have settled into that particular heaviness that comes in the later stages of falling asleep. Not quite there, but very close. The edges of your thoughts softening. The sounds around you becoming less distinct, more like a general quiet than individual sounds. That is exactly where you are meant to be. Let's talk now about something called autophagy, one of the body's most remarkable self-maintenance processes, and one with a name that sounds dramatic but describes something deeply peaceful. Autophagy comes from the Greek for self-eating, which sounds alarming but is in practice an act of extraordinary cellular housekeeping. When a cell detects that some of its components are old or damaged or no longer working properly, it breaks them down and uses the material to build something new. It recycles itself. It is the cell's version of composting, taking what is spent and returning it to something usable. The old proteins become the material for new proteins. The broken down membranes become the components of fresh ones. Nothing is wasted. Everything is transformed. Autophagy is most active during periods of rest and fasting, during sleep. During those long, quiet hours when the body is not busy with digestion or activity, when it can turn its attention inward and do its own maintenance. Another reason the night is when the deepest restoration happens. Your cells right now may be practicing autophagy, gently dismantling what is no longer needed, releasing it back into the pool of available materials, building quietly from what remains. You are renewing yourself right now as you rest. In the spring, and spring will come again, even if it feels distant right now. The forests of the northern hemisphere are full of this kind of renewal. The trees that appeared dead all winter, their branches bare and still against gray skies, begin to stir with life again. The process starts deep within the wood, in the cambium layer beneath the bark. where cells that have been dormant since autumn begin to divide again. And then, one morning, the first pale green of leaves appears at the tip of a branch, barely visible. A suggestion rather than a statement. And then more. And then the whole tree covered in the yellow-green of new leaves, converting sunlight into food again, filling the forest with the sound of photosynthesis happening quietly in millions of chloroplasts simultaneously. Renewal. It is always happening somewhere, in some form, in some season. Scientists who study aging are very interested in the question of why some organisms seem to age so much more slowly than others, and what, if anything, the slow agers have in common. One answer that keeps emerging is something deceptively simple: repair. The slow agers, the tortoises, the bowhead whales, the ancient trees, tend to be exceptionally good at repairing damage to their DNA. Their molecular machinery catches errors more efficiently, corrects them more reliably, keeps the code cleaner for longer. The fast agers, the mice, the mayflies, don't invest as heavily in repair. Their strategy is not longevity, but reproduction. Get here, live briefly but intensely, have offspring, and pass the code on. A different deal with time, but not a worse one. Humans, in evolutionary terms, are somewhere in the middle. Primates who evolved to live long enough to raise children, to know their grandchildren, to carry and transmit the accumulated learning of a life to the next generation. Our investment in repair is unusually high compared to most mammals. We are, in a sense, built to last, at least by the standards of the animal kingdom. And we are still learning how to take the best possible care of what we've been given. The stars outside, or the imagined stars if clouds are in the way tonight, are in their own long lives, each one aging at a pace that makes our human timescale look like a single breath. Our own sun is about 4.5 billion years old and is expected to continue for roughly another 5 billion years before it changes. 5 billion years. The sun has time. It is not in a hurry. It rises every morning with the same patience, the same warmth reaching downward through the atmosphere, warming the soil, warming the water, driving the photosynthesis in every leaf, warming the feathers of birds in the early morning as they face the light and absorb it. The sun has done this every morning of your life, every morning of your parents' lives and their parents' lives, stretching back through every human generation, through the emergence of our species, through the dinosaurs, through the first tiny cells that learned to harvest sunlight in the ancient ocean. The sun was there for all of it, steady, patient, giving the same warmth in every direction to everything at once. You are warmed by that same sun. You are part of that same long story. There is a concept that researchers call inflammaging, a blending of inflammation and aging, which is one of the more interesting and poetic ideas in modern biogerontology. As the body ages, there is a tendency toward a kind of low-grade background inflammation, not the acute inflammation that happens when you cut your finger and the body rushes to heal it. That is specific and purposeful and resolves when the healing is done. This is different. quieter, a kind of persistent simmer in the body's tissues. It comes from several sources: the lingering senescent cells we've talked about, some changes in the immune system, accumulated exposures over time, and it affects many of the systems associated with aging: joints, blood vessels, the brain. But here's what's interesting. The body has natural anti-inflammatory processes too. Rest is one of them. Sleep, specifically, the deep, slow-wave sleep that happens in the first half of the night, reduces inflammatory markers in the blood. The body cools its own simmer when given the chance. The ocean is good at this too. It absorbs heat. It moderates temperature. It keeps the climate of coastal places gentler and more stable than the inland regions, smoothing out the extremes. Water, always, is a moderating force, a balancing one. The ocean takes in heat during the day and releases it slowly at night. It breathes with the seasons, expanding imperceptibly in summer and contracting in winter. The way lungs expand and contract with each breath without any need for instructions or effort. If you live near water, or if you've ever fallen asleep to the sound of waves or rain, you know the particular quality of rest that comes with it. The body seems to respond to water sounds in a very old way, like a memory written deeper than thought. In Japan, there is a practice called Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, walking slowly through a forest, not to exercise, not to get anywhere, but simply to be in the presence of trees, to breathe their air, to hear the sounds they make, to let the green light filter through to you. Research has found that this practice reduces cortisol, the hormone associated with stress, and lowers blood pressure and improves immune function. The trees give off compounds called phytoncides, antimicrobial molecules that protect the tree from insects and disease. And these compounds, inhaled by the people walking among the trees, have measurable effects on the human body. The forest is medicine. It has always been medicine. We are only now finding the language to describe why. And medicine in this case means simply, you walked slowly through the trees. You breathed deeply. You listened to the wind move through the leaves. You didn't try to accomplish anything. You just let the forest do what forests do: clean the air, quiet the noise, remind you that you are part of something very large and very slow and very generous. If you'd like to find your way to more of these stories, the playlist is there for you, ready whenever you need it. A whole collection of quiet journeys for nights like this one. The human genome, the full sequence of your DNA, contains about 3 billion base pairs, 3 billion units of information. If you printed it out in standard font, the books would fill a small library. And yet the actual difference between human DNA and chimpanzee DNA is only about 1 to 2%. The difference between human DNA and that of a mouse is about 85% similarity. And between humans and a banana, we share about 60% of our DNA, 60%. You share more than half your genetic instructions with a banana, specifically with the genes that govern the most basic cellular processes: energy production, cell division, the fundamental machinery of being alive. The banana does not age the way you do. Its cellular life is arranged differently, but somewhere in its cells, doing the same basic work, are the same ancient instructions that your cells also carry. Instructions written billions of years ago in the first cells that ever lived, passed down without interruption through every generation of every living thing since. You are connected to everything, not poetically, genetically, biologically, actually. Let that land softly if you'd like, the feeling of not being separate. There's a small town in Okinawa, Japan, where the average lifespan is among the highest anywhere on Earth. And for decades, researchers have been visiting, studying, asking questions, trying to understand what the people there know, or practice, or simply are, that allows so many of them to live well into their 90s and past 100. What they find is consistent. The people eat from small plates. They have a concept called hara hachi bu, a reminder to stop eating when you are 80% full. They move throughout the day in small ways, gardening, walking, carrying, bending, rather than in concentrated bursts. They have groups called moai, committed circles of friends who support each other across decades. They have a sense of ikigai, a reason to get up in the morning, a sense of purpose that stays with them as they age. Purpose, it turns out, may be as important to longevity as anything measurable in a cell. People who have a strong sense of why they are here, what they are for, tend to live longer, to age more slowly in the ways that matter, to maintain their cognitive sharpness and emotional warmth and engagement with the world around them. The biology of purpose is still being understood, but it seems that meaning, the felt sense of mattering, of being part of something larger than yourself, reduces stress hormones, supports immune function, encourages the kinds of behavior that are themselves good for the body. The heart and the body are more connected than we sometimes remember. What we feel shapes what we are. A tree with purpose, if we can use that word, is a tree with enough light, enough water, enough soil, enough connection to the mycelial network beneath it. A tree with everything it needs to do what trees do. And such a tree does not just survive, it thrives. It grows old, slowly. It becomes the mother tree. It holds the forest together. Your breath is very slow right now, isn't it? Very slow and very even. The pause between your inhale and exhale, that small, quiet space, is where the body does some of its most important work. The vagus nerve, the long wandering nerve that connects brain to gut and heart and lungs, is most active in that pause, in the stillness between breaths. The vagus nerve is like the body's calming system. When it is active, heart rate drops, digestion improves, the immune system settles into balanced function, inflammation decreases, anxiety quiets. And one of the most powerful ways to activate it is the simplest, a slow, complete exhale, longer out than in. The body's own off switch, built into the breath itself. You have been using it all along tonight without even knowing. The mountains of the Himalayas, the highest on Earth, are still rising. The Indian subcontinent is still slowly pushing northward into the Eurasian plate, and the collision of those two enormous pieces of Earth's crust is slowly lifting the mountains higher by a few millimeters per year, but still rising. And at the same time, they are being eroded, wind and ice and water wearing them down at the surface even as the tectonic forces push them up from below. The mountain exists in dynamic balance, pushing up and being worn down simultaneously. This is what all living systems do: build and break down, grow and shed. The balance between anabolism and catabolism, building up and breaking down, is one of the fundamental rhythms of biology. When we are young, building dominates. As we age, the balance shifts, but both processes are always happening. Always, both. The body is always in motion, even when it is still. You are in motion right now. Your heart, your breathing, the peristalsis in your gut, moving slowly, the ions passing through membranes in your neurons, the ceaseless and invisible activity of trillions of cells, all going about their work without interrupting your rest for even a moment. The world inside you is very busy, and yet here you are, entirely still, entirely peaceful, resting in the middle of all of that quiet activity, the way a stone rests in the middle of a river. The river flows, the stone remains, and both are exactly as they should be. There is a concept in physics called entropy, the tendency of systems to move toward disorder over time. A sandcastle left on a beach will eventually become just sand again. A building left untended will slowly return to the earth. Everything tends in time toward its simpler components. Living things resist entropy. That is one of the most fundamental things about being alive. The constant, active work of maintaining order in the face of the universe's gentle tendency toward dissolution. Cells repair their DNA. The immune system hunts down and dismantles pathogens before they can disrupt the body's order. Proteins that have been damaged are broken down and rebuilt. The body is a constant work of maintenance against entropy, and it has been doing this work without rest since the very first moment you existed. Over a lifetime, this work becomes harder. The repair mechanisms accumulate small errors of their own. The entropy resistance grows a little less efficient. The order begins gradually and gently to give way, in the way that all things eventually do. But this is not tragedy. It is physics. It is chemistry. It is the same process that shapes stones and builds mountains and moves rivers and eventually, over enormous stretches of time, rearranges stars. You are a temporary arrangement of atoms that is, for a finite time, magnificently ordered. The entropy will have its way eventually. But tonight, right now, in this moment of rest and peace and quiet, the order is holding beautifully. The body's immune system, the complex and sophisticated network of cells and proteins that defends the body against infection and damage, changes significantly with age. This change is called immunosenescence, and it happens in two contradictory directions simultaneously. In some ways, the immune system becomes more sluggish with age. Its response to new threats is slower. The memory it holds of past infections becomes less reliable. This is part of why older people are more vulnerable to some infections, and why vaccines can be less effective. But in another way, the immune system becomes more active, more likely to trigger inflammation, more likely to produce low-level responses to things that don't require them. The immune system in age can become simultaneously less targeted and more generally reactive, like a security system that is slower to respond to actual threats but sets off false alarms more often. Researchers are studying this carefully, looking for ways to help the immune system stay calibrated, sharp where it needs to be sharp, quiet where it needs to be quiet. The immune system in its functioning is a little like a forest ecosystem. A healthy forest has predators and prey in balance, wolves and deer, hawks and mice, each keeping the other in check. When one population disappears, the others can grow unchecked in ways that damage the system. The balance is the thing that matters. In Yellowstone, when wolves were reintroduced after decades of absence, the changes rippled through the entire ecosystem. The deer changed their grazing patterns, avoiding the valleys where wolves could see them. Vegetation recovered in those valleys. Rivers changed their courses as the banks stabilized with new plant growth. The return of one species shifted everything. The body's systems are like this, everything connected to everything. The immune system and the nervous system and the endocrine system all speaking to each other in chemical language, all adjusting to what the others are doing, all part of one enormously complex and beautiful conversation that has been happening since before your first breath. And it will continue tonight in your sleep without any direction from you at all. A reminder, if you haven't already explored the Sleepy Science playlist, it's there with more nights like this one. Other topics, other journeys, other quiet hours. It's always there when you need it. There is a protein in the body called Clotho, named after one of the three fates of Greek mythology, the one who spins the thread of life. Clotho was an inspired name because this protein seems to play a significant role in how quickly the body ages. Animals with higher levels of Clotho tend to live longer, to maintain cognitive function better, to show fewer of the signs associated with aging. Animals engineered to have less Clotho age more rapidly. Clotho is produced primarily in the kidneys and the brain. It interacts with pathways that affect calcium regulation, cell survival, and the body's response to oxidative stress, the cellular damage that accumulates from the normal byproducts of using oxygen. There is something lovely about a protein named for the spinner of life's thread, as if the scientists who named it knew they were touching something close to the center of a great mystery. The fates in mythology spin the thread, measure it, and eventually cut it. Biology has its own version of this, the mechanisms that determine how long a life can run. But unlike mythology, biology's fates are not immutable. They can be influenced by sleep, by movement, by what we eat and how we manage stress and how much warmth we carry in our relationships with other people. The thread can be longer or shorter, and the conditions under which we live have more to do with its length than we once believed. Let's slow down even further now. Let the thoughts come more loosely, more like images than words. There is a tide pool somewhere on a rocky coast. The tide has gone out, and in the bowl of rock left behind, there is a small world. Anemones opening their tentacles in the still water, a hermit crab moving slowly along the bottom, tiny fish sheltering in the shadow of a mussel cluster. The light is low and golden. The sounds are the distant push of waves, the occasional cry of a gull. In that tide pool, every creature is aging at its own pace. The anemone, some species of which can live for centuries, moves almost imperceptibly slowly. The small fish is perhaps 2 years old and in the middle of its brief life. The hermit crab carries its borrowed shell, which was once the home of a snail that lived and died and became part of the sea floor, and was then inhabited by one crab after another, passed along like a piece of property through generations. Nothing in the tide pool is separate from what came before it. Everything is connected through time. The ocean itself, the water in that pool, contains atoms that have cycled through the bodies of countless living things over the span of geological time. The water molecule that rests on the surface of that pool may have been part of a dinosaur's blood once, part of a fern that grew in a carboniferous forest, part of a snowflake that fell on an ice age glacier. Water moves through everything. It has no preference. It simply flows where it can flow. The water in your body right now has a history like that. It has cycled through rain and rivers and the ocean and clouds and the bodies of countless other living things before arriving, for now, in the particular arrangement of you. And when it leaves, it will continue cycling. The river doesn't stop. It just finds a new path. Rest now in that knowledge. The path continues. It always continues. There is research showing that social connection, the simple fact of being known by others, of mattering to a community of people, is one of the strongest predictors of how well we age. Stronger in some studies than diet or exercise. Loneliness, conversely, has measurable biological effects. It increases cortisol. It promotes the kind of low-grade inflammation we've talked about. It accelerates some of the cellular processes associated with aging. We are, in our deepest biology, creatures who need each other. This is not weakness. It is the result of millions of years of evolution in groups, in families, in communities where the support of others was literally the difference between survival and not. The biology of belonging is ancient. It runs deeper than thought. Think of the mycelial network under the forest, the trees that are connected to each other, that share resources, that send chemical signals of distress and receive responses, are healthier than isolated trees. A tree on the edge of a clearing, separated from the network, grows differently than a tree at the heart of the forest, embedded in all those connections. You are embedded in connections right now, even in the quiet of this room, in this soft hour. The people who love you exist somewhere. The places that have shaped you exist. The words that have meant something to you. They exist in you, part of how you understand the world. You are not alone in your aging. You are aging in a web of connections that runs through time and through other lives, the way the mycelium runs through the forest floor, invisible, patient, ancient, and alive. There is a theory in aging science called the disposable soma theory. The word soma comes from Greek, meaning body, and the theory proposes this, that the body, the soma, is essentially a vehicle for the genes, a temporary structure built to carry the genetic code long enough to reproduce and, ideally, to help offspring survive. From this perspective, the body is not meant to last forever. It is meant to last long enough. And the resources available for repair and maintenance are balanced against the resources needed for reproduction, for growth, for the activities of life. It's a somewhat unsentimental view, but it holds a strange kind of peace when you sit with it. The body is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is lasting long enough, and often much longer. And the gradual changes of aging are not failures of design. They are simply the designed plan unfolding as intended. The apple falls from the tree when it is ripe. The leaf turns and lets go in autumn. The salmon swims upstream and spawns and gives its body back to the river and the forest. Each of these is a kind of completion, not a failure. You are not failing as you age. You are completing. In the taiga, the vast boreal forest that stretches across the northern reaches of Russia and Canada, the largest terrestrial biome on Earth, the trees are not old in the way that California redwoods are old, or New Zealand kauri. They are mostly younger trees, regenerating on a cycle of fire and regrowth that moves across the landscape over centuries. A fire moves through a section of taiga. The trees fall. The soil, enriched by the ash, opens to the sky for the first time in decades. And almost immediately, within the first spring after the fire, new life appears. Fireweed, with its tall pink blooms, carpets the burned ground. Then the first tree seedlings push through, then more. And within a decade, the young forest is already tall. Within a century, the taiga has returned to something that looks, from above, almost the same as what was there before. The fire was not destruction. It was renewal in disguise. This is the lesson the old forests have been teaching very patiently for as long as there have been forests and fires on Earth. Change moves through things, and after the change, life persists. Let your breath be very soft now. Let it be the softest breath you've taken all day, out and in and out again, finding its own slow tempo. There is a particular quality to the silence of a room where someone is sleeping, or almost sleeping. The room feels held by that quiet. The air seems different. The sounds from outside, the distant cars, the wind in the trees, the night birds, seem more muffled, more remote. You may be in that quality of quiet right now, at the very edge of sleep, where the thoughts are less in sentences and more in images, less in arguments, and more in feelings. That is exactly where you should be. The body knows how to do this. It has been doing it every night of your life. You don't have to direct it. You don't have to help it. You only have to let it. In the very long history of life on Earth, 4 billion years, give or take, aging as we know it is a relatively recent invention. The first living things were single-celled organisms that didn't age in any meaningful sense. They divided and divided, passing their genes along, each cell becoming 2, each 2 becoming 4, in a potentially endless chain. The concept of an individual lifespan barely applied. There was just the continuous flow of genetic material through time. Then, somewhere around 600 million years ago, multicellular life began to emerge. Organisms made of many cells working together, each specialized for a different role. And with multicellularity came the body. And with the body came the distinction between the cells that carry genetic information to the next generation, the germ cells, and all the other cells, the soma, the body itself. And the soma, it turned out, was mortal. This was, in a sense, one of the most significant developments in the history of life. The emergence of death as a feature rather than a bug. The body became a vehicle, temporary, beautifully constructed, and then dissolved back into the material world to make room for what comes next. Everything that has lived and died since then has participated in this same arrangement. Every flower and beetle and fish and tree and yes, every person. You are part of a tradition that goes back 600 million years. That's not a small thing to be part of. There is a field called the biology of regeneration, the study of organisms that can regrow lost parts. The axolotl, a salamander native to the lake system of Mexico City, can regrow limbs, not just skin, but the entire structure, bone, muscle, nerve, blood vessel. All of it regenerated from scratch within weeks. Scientists have been studying the axolotl for over a century, trying to understand how it does what it does, trying to learn whether similar mechanisms might be awakened in other creatures who have, somewhere in their evolutionary history, lost this ability. The axolotl has another remarkable quality. It is neotenic, meaning it retains juvenile characteristics into adulthood. Its cells remain, in a sense, younger than its age, more plastic, more capable of change. This neoteny may be connected to its regenerative ability, the openness to becoming something new. Creativity in humans has been compared to this quality, the ability to stay open, to not close down into fixed patterns too early, to keep a kind of cellular flexibility in the mind, the ability to form new connections, learn new things, find new paths. This quality is trainable. It is not fixed in place when we are born. It can be cultivated over a lifetime through curiosity and learning and the willingness to be surprised. The human brain, as we've said, can continue growing new neurons into old age. The mind can continue learning. The person you are at 80 can know things and see things and understand things that the person you were at 20 could not yet see. Time adds. as well as subtracts. It adds depth and texture and a certain quality of understanding that only comes from having lived through things. The rings in the wood are not only record, they are structure. The oldest wood is the strongest wood, the heartwood, the dark center that holds everything up. The night is very deep now. Wherever you are safe. The world is doing its slow, patient work outside. The moon, if it is visible, tracing its old arc across the sky. The stars keeping their ancient positions. The trees breathing quietly. The soil alive with the invisible work of bacteria and fungi, breaking down the old to make room for the new. And inside you, the same work. The glymphatic wash, the cellular repair, the slow recalibration of systems that have been running all day, and now, in the gift of rest, are allowed to tend to themselves. This is what sleep is. It is not an absence of living. It is one of the deepest forms of it. In the Atacama Desert, the driest place on Earth, a high plateau in South America where almost no rain falls for decades at a time, life persists in the most unlikely forms. Microorganisms living in the pores of translucent stones, using the stone itself to filter the harsh sunlight to a livable level, surviving on the moisture that condenses from coastal fog, waiting sometimes for decades for rain that will finally arrive. When it does, in years called El Niño years, when ocean warming brings more moisture to the coast, the desert blooms. Millions of seeds that have been waiting in the dry soil for years, sometimes for decades, suddenly germinate. Within weeks, the desert floor is covered with flowers. Hillsides that were bare earth become carpets of purple and yellow and white. The seeds were always there. They were only waiting for the right conditions. Life waits. It is patient in a way that is almost incomprehensible to us, moving as we do through our faster human time. But the patience is real. The seeds don't expire while they wait. They hold their potential intact, dry and safe in the soil, keeping their code perfect until the moment arrives. You are also, in some ways, keeping potential intact tonight. The rest is not loss of time. It is the condition that makes tomorrow possible. Research in epigenetics has shown something astonishing, that our epigenetic clocks, the patterns of chemical markers on our DNA that reflect biological age rather than chronological age, can sometimes be reversed. Not just slowed, reversed. In laboratory settings, under specific conditions, older cells have been made to express patterns more characteristic of younger cells. The work of Shinya Yamanaka, who won the Nobel Prize for discovering how to turn adult cells back into stem cells, back to an earlier, more flexible state, opened a door that scientists are still walking through. If a differentiated adult cell can be reprogrammed to its earlier state, what does that mean for aging? What does it mean for the body's capacity for renewal? The science is early. The applications in human health are uncertain and years away at best. But the principle is extraordinary, that the biological clock written in epigenetic markers is not necessarily a one-way ratchet. That cells remember, in some chemical sense, an earlier version of themselves. That renewal is not only theoretical, it is demonstrated in cells in a dish, in organisms in a lab, in the axolotl's regrowing limb, in the desert that blooms after decades of waiting. Renewal is one of the oldest things in biology, as old as life itself, as old as the first cell that divided and became two, generating something new from something that already existed. The night is one long act of renewal. You are in the middle of it. Let your eyes be completely closed now, if they are not already. Let your jaw go soft. Let your hands be exactly as heavy as they are. There is nothing to hold. Here we are at the very end of our long drift through time. And what a drift it has been. Through the telomeres and the tide pools, the ancient clams and the desert flowers, the whales and the stars and the sleeping forests and the quiet shimmer of the glymphatic system washing your brain clean in the dark. All of it, every piece of it, has been telling the same slow story. That time moves through living things the way wind moves through grass. That it changes everything, but nothing it changes is diminished. That aging is not the opposite of life. It is one of its most essential expressions. The ancient redwood is more itself at 2,000 years than it was at 20. The stone in the river is more perfectly smooth for every year it has been tumbled. The heartwood is the darkest and the strongest part of the tree, and it is the oldest part. You are, in every moment of your life, becoming more precisely and fully yourself. The years add to you in ways that are not always visible from the outside, but are deeply real. The understanding that comes only from experience, the compassion that grows from having known difficulty, the quiet that comes from having learned that most things eventually pass. The cells in your body have been doing their patient work since before you drew your first breath. The mitochondria, those ancient travelers who chose to stay, have been making energy for every thought you've ever had, every step you've ever taken, every night of sleep that has carried you into a new day. And tonight, as you rest, they keep working. Everything keeps working. The body does not stop caring for itself when you stop directing it. It knows what to do. It has always known. The stars are out somewhere, even if clouds are covering them tonight. They are always out. The same stars that the Sardinian centenarians see from their hillside terraces. The same stars that shone over the bristlecone pines when they were still saplings 5,000 years ago. The same stars that Greenland sharks navigate below without any awareness of, deep in the cold, dark water. And here you are, beneath those stars, in your own warm and quiet place, at the end of a day that is now completely finished. There is nothing left to do in it, nothing to correct or revisit or prepare for. The day is done, and you can lay it down. You can lay everything down. If this story has been a companion to your rest tonight, a gentle like, and maybe a comment, would warm this little channel's heart. And the playlist is there, a whole collection of these quiet nights, whenever you need to drift somewhere peaceful again. But for now, there is nowhere to go, nothing to find. Everything you need is exactly here. The breath moving in, the breath moving out. The soft weight of your own body held without effort. The sounds of the world settling into their nighttime quiet. Or the silence, if silence is what surrounds you. The cells renewing, the brain washing itself clean, the telomeres resting, the mitochondria doing their warm, continuous, ancient work. You are a living thing on a living planet, in a living universe, resting in this small, warm, particular moment. One of an infinite number of moments that have been and will be. But this one, this exact one, is yours. The desert blooms eventually. The seeds know how to wait. The river always finds its way to the sea. And you are resting now in the middle of your own long and beautiful story. Not at the end, just resting. The way all living things rest. The trees and the clams and the deep diving whales and the frost-worn mountains and the seeds sleeping in the dry soil. Just resting. Safe. Warm. Held. Close your eyes if they aren't already closed. Let the night do what the night does best. You are very well taken care of. Sleep Now, the Sleepy Science Channel. More quiet journeys in the playlist, always waiting for you.